Do the narratives of Jesus' birth contradict each other? It's a good question because you asked it, and here is our answer.
Now, who can tell me what this nativity play of ours is all about?
In the books of Matthew and Luke in the Bible, we'll find some small differences between the facts shared surrounding the birth of Jesus. Some believe that these differences mean that the narratives contradict each other.
If you look close enough through all that chaos and confusion,
we'll find that they actually complement each other very nicely. We can look at the difference between Matthew and Luke's narratives as providing their own unique special additions to Jesus' birth story. In Matthew, we are told about the events with the Magi and King Herod's plot. Luke chose to focus on stories of individuals surrounding the birth story, Mary's early pregnancy, and some special visitations.
So far, I'm just hearing a factual depiction of what's happening here.
Even though Matthew and Luke contain different details about Jesus' birth story, that does not mean they contradict each other. Together, the books of Matthew and Luke present a rich narrative that describes the events surrounding the birth of Jesus. Just because something is omitted from one narrative, that doesn't mean they contradict each other or that they didn't happen.
Sometimes you have to read every word to get the whole picture.
The arguments. Here we are.
You're wrong and I can prove it.
Number 1, the most common argument is that Mary and Joseph's flight to Egypt is only recorded in Matthew's account. However, Luke never directly says that Mary and Joseph didn't go to Egypt. He just never mentions it. Silence doesn't necessarily equate an argument against something.
Okay, the hologram left that part out.
I'm not saying that it didn't happen.
Another argument is that Luke doesn't allow enough time for Mary and Joseph to go to Egypt. There were about 32 days between Jesus' circumcision and the visit to the temple in Jerusalem, so making the trek to Egypt and back again would be pretty tough to do in about 32 days. But what if the flight to Egypt happened after Mary and Joseph visited the temple? Matthew 2:11 implies they had an established home in Bethlehem. A lot could have happened between the temple visit and returning to Nazareth. When we put the flight in the middle of Luke 2:39, the alleged contradictions end.
Well, consider this case closed.
All right, let's put Matthew and Luke's narratives together to illustrate how the accounts actually harmonize completely. Mary and Joseph visited the temple in Jerusalem to present Jesus to the Lord and make sacrifices according to custom. There they met a devout man named Simeon, who had been told by God that he would see the Messiah before his death. They also met Anna, a prophetess, who immediately recognized Jesus as the long-awaited Savior. After meeting Jesus, Simeon and Anna gave thanks to the Lord and spoke of him around Jerusalem, spreading the news that the people's redemption had arrived. The little family returned to Bethlehem, where they had established a home. Joseph may have thought it would be good for Jesus to be raised in the city of his royal line. It's also plausible that Joseph took a temporary job in Bethlehem while awaiting the birth of Jesus, and the job had become permanent. Meanwhile, in the east, the rumors about the king of the Jews had reached the ears of some magi. They remembered spotting an earthly light about 2 years earlier and made the connection between these events and a prophecy about a star foretelling the arrival of a new ruler for Israel. The Magi journeyed to Jerusalem to ask King Herod where they could find this new king, as they wanted to worship him. Herod, afraid this so-called king would overthrow him, gathered priests and scribes to figure out where to find the child. They determined the birthplace to be Bethlehem because of another prophecy. Herod directed the Magi and told them to come back to confirm that Bethlehem was indeed where the child could be found, for he secretly wanted to eliminate this prophesied king. When the Magi arrived in Bethlehem, they saw Jesus at home and presented him with gifts. After they left, God warned the Magi not to report to Herod, so they returned to their homeland by a different way. That very night, Joseph had a dream instructing him to take his family and flee to Egypt, for Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him. Once Herod realized the Magi weren't coming back, his true motives became evident. In horrific fury, he ordered soldiers to murder all the male children under 2 years of age living in Bethlehem and the surrounding area. Thankfully, Joseph had heeded the warning, and they were long gone by the time the slaughter of innocents occurred. After Herod's death in 4 BC, Joseph had another dream, telling him it was safe to leave Egypt. But as they got closer, Joseph learned that Herod's son was now reigning over Judea. Fearing the old king's son might have the same ideas as his father, Joseph changed direction and moved his family to Nazareth instead of Bethlehem, which brings our timelines together.
I just wanted to say that was really fast for me.
Matthew and Luke were different people, each with unique occupation-influenced writing styles, and each writing with specific intentions and audiences in mind. That was the answer to the question, do the narratives of Jesus' birth contradict each other?
Not guilty on all charges.
Make sure to thumb, sub, bell,
And wear an ugly Christmas sweater.